Hello.
When your mind is
Good evening, Graham.
His idea was pants. Hello, Charles.
That's an even. Welcome to the evening. The word pants. Yeah, absolutely. Tottenham's defence.
It's a good
So
start.
good evening, and may we just say at this very early stage, this is two big egos in a small car, the Christmas edition. I am Charles Hutchinson. I am freelance journalist, editor of the charleshutchpress.co.uk website, still writing pieces regularly for the York Press newspaper, also feature on Jorvik Radio every fortnight, previewing what's coming up in the arts. And Graham Chalmers, who the heck are you?
Well, my CV is vast.
That's a bit
without,
boastful.
without actually being a household name, which I'm definitely not. It's too big to mention.
I think one could mention
Yeah, you got to
that
mention the
you're
Harrogate
now even
Advertiser.
featuring on BBC Six Music, where you got to talk about yourself
Yeah.
in
I do.
bold
I do
colours.
want to milk that, Charles. Please don't bring it up again. Just please,
So,
please.
so sorry.
But
So
yeah, I got to
sorry.
mention the Harrogate Advertiser, and I've
Yeah.
got to mention charm events and music events and
Yes.
vinyl sessions. And let's leave it at that. I'm also the man
Let's
who
leave it
thought
at
of the
that.
name of this podcast.
Can we at this stage
Which, if you
also
look at the name of this podcast,
tells you everything?
this podcast actually won the prize for the best name for a podcast in the world.
Absolutely. Well, I think it is beholden
Because it
on us
tells you
to
exactly
wish.
the great thing is it tells you what the name tells you what the podcast is about. That's the best thing about it. It's about cars and
It
egos.
tells you about egos, not about cars. Correct. So, Graham, we, as I said, it's beholden upon us, I think, to wish all
Could that be a
our
prefab
listeners.
sprout song?
That probably was to wish all our very generous and kind listeners season's greetings and the very merriest of Christmases. And we look forward, obviously, to reuniting in a week's time anyway, when New Year and will be fast approaching. So we've been doing.
There's no rest for the egos. The egos don't rest.
No, rest is not applicable. An ego has to be thriving and booming and pumping at all times, I feel, so certainly not.
It has to be fed. The
Yeah,
ego has to be fed.
has to be, absolutely no hibernation. So, Graham, we've been over these last few weeks doing a series of look backs over the year, which of course I realize is all over the place, but I think it's only appropriate for those with massive egos to tell other people the kind of things that they should have been going to. If they didn't, well,
Excellent.
you should have paid more attention to two big egos in a small car. So our focus tonight is primarily on gigs. I will touch on a theatre show later. I'm picking out one. I may yet next week do a little bit more on theatre shows, but I'm going to pick out one particular theatre show from this year. But we're going to start, I think, with each other's 5 gigs of the year, I think. I hope it's 5, not 10, Graham, because otherwise we'll never get them all in.
No, it's 5.
I thought it would be.
It's definitely 5.
And there's also a comedy gig that you also want to talk about, which I'm actually fascinated to hear about as well. But Graham, shall we go with our 5th choice first? I mean, I haven't particularly done these actually in ascending order. Beyond, I have definitely got a significant gig of the year as a gig of the year.
All right. Well, in descending order, number 5. Well, before number 5, I'm going to briefly name check York band Sun King at Leeds Festival in August.
Yes,
who were excellent. A sort of like pumped up rock version of a 70s yacht rock band. They were very good. Also the veteran Hull-based punk band, satirical punk band that is, Percy, who played the Den in Harrogate.
Yes,
I think it was June time. They were brilliant. And the High Llamas, Sean O'Hagan, his mob at Hebden Bridge. They were quite extraordinary to see live. But number 5 for me is, and everybody who listens to this podcast, of which there are more listeners this year than last year, will know that number 5 is pretty obvious. It's Field Music at Jumbo Records, an in-store signing session live gig.
Yeah.
But what made it good wasn't the Brewis brothers themselves playing tracks off the Limits of Language album, our album year. It was the fact there was only 2 of them playing an album which is largely electronic, and they didn't have any electronic gear with them. And David has got health issues in his leg, which meant standing up was quite difficult.
Yeah.
So in the face of all that adversity, the versions of the album tracks they did live, the two of them, were actually better than the album. That's how good field music are.
My fifth choice, I mean, I know you'll be exhausted by featuring James, but this time the James were playing back at Leeds First Direct Arena, a regular place for them to play. I think this year they also, from memory, played Scarborough Open Air Theatre, and they also played, I think, possibly even 2 nights at the Peace Hall at Halifax, which is becoming one of the most significant summertime venues. I mean, both venues, actually, Scarborough Open Air Theatre and Peace Hall at Halifax, have been doing really, really well. But I think if you look at the two, even what's coming up for next year, actually, Peace Hall seems to be still just having perhaps, some better choices, some that, or maybe that's my personal choice or whatever, but fantastic venues, both of them. So I saw James at Leeds First Direct Arena. This was the year that they released Yummy as an album, and it was strongly promoting that. But what I loved about this was that this is not a band that just settles on playing the songs and not a lot of detail in the background, not even just doing what tends to happen in the Leeds First Direct Arena, which is having the imagery. It's what they did with the imagery that was fascinating. So they even used AI to warp, if you like, some of the visual imagery and to play around with that. Obviously, flowers has been hugely significant as an insignia for James through the years, and again, that would keep appearing as well. Dazzling floral presentations, as well as the faces of all the musicians. It was a perfectly constructed gig, as it so often is with James. The set list actually on other nights would be different, and I love the way that they never settle on just to play the same numbers throughout the tour. And as ever, they are wonderfully watchable as a band, and I actually think they become ever more watchable. That may be because I see them so often, so you see the individuals and how they grow as performers, but also how they love performing with each other, which is so apparent in that band. And I mean, I enjoyed them in the earlier iteration, of course, but I think they've grown into one of the great live bands in Britain. And also,
well, they're like Shed 7. The older they get, the better they get on stage.
Yes, absolutely, which we'll come on to Shed 7 later on. So number 4, Graham.
Well, I saw James supporting New Order at Glasgow Barrowlands in 1986, and Tim Booth was very different then. It was a bit like, compared to how he is now as a stage performer, he was like Jilted John before he turned into Bono.
Well, of course, he was an actor originally. That's what he trained as, did Tim.
Yeah. But number 4 is a gig at Peace Hall in Halifax, strangely enough.
Oh, excellent.
And that was Air, the French duo, who technically were doing Moon Safari in its entirety, but you got quite a lot of tracks as well. And they were in this amazing Perspex see-through, almost like a house showroom performing. And the whole thing was more like an art installation than a gig.
Yes.
And it was amazing. But the only thing wrong with it was that it was such an amazing art installation, unusual gig that I felt we should have been sitting down. It was no gig for standing up, quaffing beer. It was much more erudite, and it was like it should have been treated as a classical concert, really. Classical music concert.
I mean, it's interesting. Some bands still insist on having standing gigs, and yet their actual fan age is getting older and might actually appreciate the chance to sit down. But I guess it's still that thing of certain bands want to say, look, we've always had people standing. So from what you're describing, if once it's an installation in some ways and an event, I think seating, you're absolutely right, Graham, has its validity there. I mean, you sit down for a film, you sit down for theatre, and when
ballet, opera, you don't stand up for opera.
Performance goes into that field. I don't think it's a controversial decision to suggest. Maybe because they think there are dance tracks and that people would want to dance to them.
Well, but I think the main reason is that you get more people in the venue standing up than sitting down. So you sell more tickets.
You do. That's absolutely true. So my number 4 came early in the year. This was March the 13th at Leeds Brudenell Social Club. Bill Ryder Jones, who released the album Yaki Da. And Bill is a performer who can be, well, he has struggled with his mental well-being, and it's always charted even in his songwriting. he's had depression problems, etc. And you're never quite sure how he will be in a gig. But this was a really triumphant night for him, in which he was in really good spirits throughout. And I think that really helped, for all the fact that the songs are full in the lyrics of vulnerabilities and difficulties and struggles in life. The music on this latest album in particular is in some ways contrasting with that, which is, I'm not calling it a trick, it's what bands from the Northwest have done often, which is beautiful melodic music and yet sad themes within songs. In his case, it's actually that the voice has become, it's not a strong, powerful instrument. It's a voice in its own way that you hear it clearly enough, but it's not a powerhouse voice, because that's not what the lyrics are about. So he actually sings in a way that suits what he's singing about.
Yes, there's a fragility the whole time.
Absolutely, and that was completely apparent, even though he seemed to be having a much better night than sometimes when performing, which is why it was such a joyful gig. And he had wonderful musicians that were with him. That's so important as well. How a performer interacts with his musicians. I think from memory, his brother was playing with him. One of his brothers, of course, sadly, another brother of his, of course, died very young in very tragic circumstances, which has been addressed in I think more than one song actually. But it was a band that loved playing with him as well, and that was so good to see. So that was number 4, Graham.
Yeah, I think I would enjoy that, because Yakida, the album which I got, which I liked, in one of the songs, "This Can't Go On," is one of the best songs of the whole year.
Absolutely.
But I felt the album, have listened to again recently, is like 3 gloomy songs too many. If it actually shortened it to 10 tracks, it would have been a brilliant album. But eventually, it's like depressed me. But I think live, I would enjoyed it.
Because obviously he could draw on songs from other albums.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And you're right, actually, because I think in judging Yakida, you could have condensed it. Definitely that happened. So Graham, your number 3 choice.
Number 3, Old Timers Night Out. You and me go to the Barbican in York and see Nick Mason, original Pink Floyd drummer.
I'm glad you've chosen this.
With Nick Mason's Subtlest Secrets Pink Floyd band, with Gary Kemp on sort of semi-lead vocals and lead guitar, and is it Guy Pratt who's played with?
Yes, it was him.
The remaining members of Pink Floyd for a long time.
Yes.
And all the tracks are from 67 to 72. There's none of the big hits, technically speaking, unless you can't see Emily playing Arnold Lane, the early ones, the Syd Barrett songs. And it was amazing, because not only did it look fantastic, completely mind-blowingly psychedelic, all the visuals behind the band, but when you heard these album tracks from such a long time ago, the tracks that were best were the longest, most way out there tracks, which still sounded fresh and new and adventurous and risky. And the tracks that didn't stand up so well were the obvious tracks like See Emily Play and Arnold Lane. But I would say, if you went to gig by Mogwai now and went to see Nick Mason's Subtlest Secrets, there are moments in the Nick Mason gig which are more modern than Mogwai.
Yeah, I absolutely. One of the things that I did also like was that they didn't just play the obvious Syd Barrett tracks either. From memory, there was one which was it Syd's vocal played. They'd managed to split Syd's vocal from a song that I think he never formally recorded. I think it was just from a rehearsal.
It was a sort of like beat group blues number throwaway. I mean, it was hardly a classic number.
No, but I love the fact that it
was interesting here.
Yeah, and that's why because I'm not saying that there isn't a role for gigs where bands get back together and revisit things, but actually when it seemed to me to actually bring out things in the music that maybe we hadn't even appreciated before, that came through, and the fact that it wasn't apart from the drummer, obviously, it was musicians that have come to play either with Pink Floyd or just had the joy of playing Pink Floyd songs which they would never have done before, and that very strongly came across. It was meticulous, the musicianship as well, which was a joy to see too.
Yeah, but it wasn't like studied. It wasn't like
No,
perfection for perfection's sake.
no, that
They
you're
captured the
right.
feel
You're right.
rather than just going for the details.
Good point. Because also Nick Mason's humour came through very strongly as well, didn't it? Which you're right, and
But
it wasn't.
he was actually very funny,
It
which is not
was, and you're
associated with
right.
Pink Floyd
It was
humor.
in no way was it a po-faced show, and that's an important point to make. He was actually, yes, he was very irreverent
That's
about
true.
former colleagues. So
Mm,
my number three
mm.
was one of the most iconic of all female musicians who came to play with her band at the York Barbican on October the 31st. So this was the Pretenders, led by Chrissie Hynde, age 73. And there'd been, I think, was it Relentless? I think was the name of the rather than
Yeah.
Restless. I think it was called Relentless.
Mm, mm, mm.
She, this you are watching someone who at 73 commands a stage absolutely as much as she
Mm.
ever did. Though I think before even the gig had started, there'd been an indication that she would not tolerate anyone taking any photographs whatsoever.
Yeah. Don't mess with Chrissy Hine.
She'd made this clear. Anyway, partway
Mm.
through the first song, she spots someone trying to film something and she starts waving disapprovingly.
Was that you?
It was not me because I actually loathe people taking photographs at concerts as well and filming things. It has always really, really irritated me. And so I'm absolutely championing Chrissie Hynde for two reasons as one of the gigs of the year. One, how good the gig was, but two, how right she was. So it got interesting to the point where the person didn't stop. So she actually said, look, if this goes on, I'm not, that's it. And, no gig, end of gig. So that, and I think absolutely right to do that. If she does not want that to be disturbing her focus and her concentration, bear that in mind, audience. You're there for the live experience. She's there for the live experience. She doesn't want to be recorded. She wants to concentrate on the gig. So she was sharply.
I agree.
She was sharply witty as ever. But what I liked as well with that was an awareness as an American living in Britain that came through. There was also an awareness of the aging process and getting older. And she talked obviously about the early days of the Pretenders when, of course, two of the musicians died in very sad circumstances. And she reflected on that as well. And about the aging process. I should
Did
say
she mention Jim Kerr of Simple Minds?
She did not mention Jim. No.
Because he in the new Simple Minds documentary, Everything is Possible.
Oh, yeah.
Jim talks about how when he decided it was time to grow up and stop just being a rock and roller and think about things like family, and he met Chrissie Hynde, and he said, when I met Chrissie Hynde, I really stepped up. He said she wasn't only just a brilliant musician, she was a formidable person to be partners with.
I can imagine that, and that absolutely came across in the performance, and that's why I'm so pleased to have the chance to go to that concert. So that was number 3, Graham.
Excellent. Well, number 2 for me is something a bit obscure. It's someone who hasn't truly broken through, still sort of bubbling under, and he's from that trend for retro soul that Michael Kiwanuka and Curtis Harding, who did that brilliant album If Words Were Flowers, which came out in 2021.
Oh, yes.
Although Curtis Harding's a little bit more hip-hop influence, but he's still retro soul. So it's Jolene Nagonda, who played early evening stage at Dewshed Festival in North Yorkshire, and heard of him. And I hear this female voice doing sort of like retro soul from the distance.
Yeah.
And it's not a female voice, it's a male voice, sort of falsetto. And he's there with these black shades on and his open neck red shirt, fairly skinny. And he's got a voice like an angel, and he's playing great electric lead guitar. And he's doing this very smooth, gorgeous retro soul. And so I rushed off to the Crash Records pop-up tent and said, have you got any Jolene Nagonda? And so I bought the album on the spot, which is not the sort of thing I usually do. So you really, if you like retro soul, Jolene Nagonda live is sensational.
Excellent. So my number 2 is technically 2 gigs, as indeed is my number 1. The reason it's 2 gigs is that there were 2 gigs actually that played comparatively close to each other. And this was The Howl and the Hum, which is in its second version. Sam Griffiths and previous band members, including Bradley and Conor Hearns, finished playing together at the end of last year with a series of 3 gigs. Howl and the Hum returned this year. It's not a solo project. It is still with musicians with Sam, but Sam Griffiths is the principal songwriter, and he has worked with other musicians on the album, including Eleanor Moss and also Matthew Hurd from Seafarers, and both Eleanor and Matthew were involved in the first of the two gigs, and that was at the Leeds Irish Centre, where they basically, it was the biggest audience that Sam's ever played to, which was 800, sold out show, promoting the second album called Same Mistake Twice. And he then played, as he always does in York, he plays Christmas gigs in York. And the first night of which I caught the second half of the show, having been to Kate Rusby's gig early in the evening. So I arrive, and they're all dressed either as wise men, or the kings, actually, is what Sam's dressed as.
Yeah.
And except for the bassist Naomi MacLeod, who, well, I never, because I got there, as I say, halfway through the gig, I do not know whether she was dressed as Mary or an angel, and I never did find out. But anyway, they were as a nativity scene, and included in the show was one of Sam's Christmas songs, which is he's done a series of Christmas songs. This is the one, Sunny Christmas, in which he basically said, he commented on the song, he said, a combination of too much drink and spite. That's what's led to this Christmas record. The following night, he played solo, doing Howl and the Hum songs and doing more Christmas songs, including Die Hard Christmas. It's going to be that was the last performance in Yorkshire. He's now left Yorkshire, gone to London. He's going to be teaching guitar at a primary school, going to be based in Walthamstow, but he will continue the Howl and the Hum. But he's become a really strong frontman, magnetic performer, and has a real sense of controlling an audience or using an audience, playing with an audience, and using stillness, using grace. And these are qualities that have gradually come into his performance more and more, together with really sublime lyric writing. He writes really well about the vulnerabilities we all have. He writes well about love and loss and failings, never really about success in love, always about things going wrong. I mean, I know that's a familiar route, but he does so in a way that's, I think,
writing about success is so boring. Can you imagine, like?
Well, I mean, who wants to hear about success? I mean, it doesn't work in songs. I mean, I really don't. That's why I hate songs with the word I. Hate songs about I. I've always said this, No.
Was his Christmas song any good?
Yes.
Was his Christmas song any good?
It was. It was absolutely. It was beautiful and gorgeous. The other thing is,
Christmas songs are like poetry. Anybody can have a go, but it's very hard to do a great.
No. Because it's this image that the person's gone off swanned off to somewhere very nice, Bahamas or the Caribbean or whatever. And he's still in Yorkshire. And so it's this contrast between the two Christmas experiences. It's with a former lover, I think, again. And but of course, it's got a beautiful tune to go with it as well, which gives it the added sting. So they technically two gigs, but they are number two in my list. And it's going to be interesting to see what Sam has promised. He will keep coming back to York to play Christmas gigs at the Crescent. And we're going to hold him to that promise, because they're all great joys. Yeah, and he loves playing the Crescent, and the Crescent's been a big part in Sam's performing and in the Howl and the Hum's path so far. So Graham, numero uno.
So that's your number one. That's your number one, really.
That's my number two.
Oh, so you're having two number twos?
No, I'm having another. That's my number two, and I need a number one. But I want your number one first.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have three number ones. No, I'm not going to have three number ones. No. Anyway, I could have gone for Fontaine's DC because I've seen them a lot live. But when I saw them in the transition towards being a fully fledged big band, sort of rock band, at least first of August, Brian Chatton was like, I didn't think he quite nailed it. He's pulling these rock shapes, these rock poses on stage, but he didn't seem to be sort of fully formed. He was like doing it with sort of like slight ironic, slight discomfort of being a rock star. But I heard that when they played Leeds Arena recently, they really were fantastic, and they've become more comfortable being a big band and a big stage, is what I heard. But anyway, I didn't see that Leeds Arena, so instead I'm going to vote for an act at Leeds Arena that I spent a lot of time on this podcast criticising. And you may
know what's going to come out of your mouth right now.
You may say this is rank hypocrisy, or it's me.
I'm going to call it rank hypocrisy.
Yeah, but wasn't it Oscar Wilde said once that the only people who are totally consistent are people who are dull with no imagination? So
yeah,
I'm
going to say put it more eloquently than that, but anyway, you're allowed that.
Yeah, obviously, Charles. Well, if I'd seen Paul McCartney recently, maybe at the Co-op in Manchester, I might have said Paul McCartney was the year, but I wasn't there. But I was there for Nick Cave and the band scenes at Leeds Arena. And even though I had big doubts about his whole messianic stage performance and rapport with his crowd, and he has got into religion recently, despite that, I thought, well, who else live on stage has performed anything like Nick Cave in terms of power and talent and meaning, even if you don't actually agree with the meaning the whole time? So I thought, nobody. So I'm going to have to swallow my pride and seeing Nick Cave in the band season was my favourite gig of the whole year.
I think, Graham, that's an entirely fair analysis. The experience of, the things that you didn't feel worked with the gig, I think it's fair enough to think that. But you've drawn out there the qualities that you want ultimately in the great performer. And he did deliver.
Well, he's a great performer, for sure.
Absolutely. And he delivered that. So I think it's entirely fair to be utterly rank hypocrisy. I've got no problem with that whatsoever.
I think if I was in a band, my first style would be called Rank Hypocrisy.
So, Graham, I think you can predict my number one this year.
Is it the Alan Ayckbourn Experience?
It's not the Alan Ayckbourn Experience.
No. Scarborough.
No, it is not. Okay. So this year, Shed 7 have had a quite remarkable year.
Oh, yeah.
If you could do a 30th anniversary year the way that they've done a 30th anniversary year, bookended by 2 number 1 albums, which is, extraordinary to do that. Right, but at the heart of all this, they are above all a York band. That is what they are. Yes, they appeal all over the country, but they love being a York band. When they were told when they started, you've got to call yourself a Leeds band, they refused to be a Leeds band. They are a York band. Yeah. So where better then to see them in the summer than in York, in the York Museum Gardens, presented by Future Sounds, who are going to return actually this summer for a second summer of Outdoor Gigs, by the way.
That's great.
For which so far Elbow have been confirmed, but there will be others too. So this was July.
Isn't Billy Martin playing? Isn't Billy Martin playing with Elbow?
I think that's right. She is right. You are right, because Guy Gardner likes to play her on his 6 music shows. You're right. She is. So this was July the 19th and the 20th. They had guest musicians: Pete Doherty, Laura McClure, Rowetta, as we know from Happy Mondays, Huntington School
powerful
Choir,
voice,
and a brass section. And the set list slightly changed from both nights, but the same guests and largely the same material. And the way the night finished is that going across the bridge, one of the 3 bridges in York, it might have been News Bridge. Anyway, whichever it was, everyone was still singing Chasing Rainbows. And I'll never forget that. This was York celebrating York's best band in terms of commercial success and most consistent band, and being proud of that and being very York about it and loving singing, going home across a bridge, chasing rainbows. So I say to Rick, what an amazing year, and to Paul and to Tom and the 2 newer members of the band as well, who've brought their own invigorating elements to the group. And that's been a hugely successful year, and they were truly unforgettable gigs, those 2. And so well done also Future Sound getting those organized, and the events were ran really, really well. And I'm so glad to hear that there was a possibility that Future Sound were not going to be allowed to do them again because there'd been one complaint. Anyway, the council have backed Future Sound in being allowed to do it, and I say good, absolutely right decision. So all round, gig of the year.
Yeah, that's a good call. But Shed 7 are amazing. They're a bit like a boxer who, when they were young, won a few British titles, but then 25 years later comes back into boxing.
Like George Foreman.
Yeah. And lo and behold, they become world champions. It's like a Hollywood story.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I can see that. So I think we've had a great, I think this year I've really enjoyed. I've seen fewer gigs than I've seen more and more theatre now probably than anything. I've perhaps seen fewer gigs, but I have to say I have so enjoyed so many concerts this year. It's been a thoroughly enjoyable year. Now I'm just going to mention, Graham, one theatre piece. I'm
Oh
not sure
yeah.
how much time we've got left because we also want to do a Maisie Adams gig. But just to say
Yeah.
that I picked out as the one theatre show of the year, Wise Children. That's Emma Rice's company, and Emma Rice did Bluebeard,
Mm.
and Bluebeard came to York Theatre Royal. It didn't play to big audiences, which is the first time actually that a show by Emma Rice's Wise Children, or indeed when she's brought Knee High, hasn't played to huge audiences. It was a gruesome tale of controlling women,
Mm.
um, and
Oh.
she'd avoided this subject before, but it was
Mm.
very obviously very topical. The actual press night coincided with the report into the inquiry on the murder of York-born Sarah Everard by the Met Police Office,
Mm.
the killing by Wayne
Yeah.
Couzens, and that added to the potency of the night. It was.
So why do you think it didn't attract the crowds?
I wish I knew. I think it's less because it's less well known than other pieces that she's put on in York, and I
Mm.
think that did seem to. I think people didn't really know the story of Bluebeard, but she made it a remarkable piece on every level as a theatre performance. The way that music's used, the way that the visuals are so stunning, the way she uses language, the way that she uses people that are fascinating to look at, not conventionally pretty or handsome, just interesting to look at in a different way. And they're so bold in their theatre making. So they've done Brief Encounter
Mm.
before. They've done Mallory Towers. They've done Wuthering Heights. So
Oh, I
maybe
can see the problem now.
they
They've gone for safe middle class theatre audience choices, and then she's suddenly done something that
yeah.
isn't like that. So that's the problem.
This,
So
yeah.
it would have required brilliant marketing to
I
have
mean,
pulled that off.
absolutely. So I described it as intelligent, topical, provocative, surprising, full of music, politics, tender truth, mirror balls, dazzling costumery, comedy as much as
Hmm.
tragedy, actors as skilled at musicianship as acting and dancing to boot, embracing the Greek, Shakespearean, cabaret, kitchen sink, and multimedia ages of theatre. A wonderful
Bloody
piece.
hell.
And
That's amazing.
I
Amazing
mean, if people didn't go, you missed extraordinary theatre making by one of the great theatre makers in the country.
Hmm.
Put here,
That should have been the marketing strategy, extraordinary theatre making.
absolutely. Or she makes
Yeah.
audacious theatre full of mischievous imagination and stylish innovation in her vow to entertain, move, and transport. She does so with a bravura flourish that means broad comedy and terror. A potty-mouthed nun and a filmic slow-motion climactic fight, a dig at Jamie Oliver cookbooks, and CCTV film footage of the lead up to a murder. So even that's in the piece. It was truly remarkable.
Excellent.
So Graham, tell me about Maisie Adams, of course, from the panel, former head girl of
From
one
Harrogate,
of the schools. Yeah.
St. Aidan's High School.
So she has that connection with Harrogate, and she's come back to play in Harrogate at a small venue. So tell us about it. When this was, where
she's a total Harrogate girl until 2017, and nobody really heard of her as a comedian. Yeah. And so her rise has truly been meteoric since she won a Fringe Award that year at Edinburgh. And she's now on every TV program going, including like Between the Covers, the book review show as well, because she's highly intelligent, but completely likable, totally nice, but always intelligent, down to earth, but in no way condescending to the audience.
No.
And she can play big venues these days and does. She's got a huge tour going on, and she's played abroad, and she's had her first Sky TV special, which was actually recorded in October at Harrogate Theatre. And yet she still comes back to Harrogate every year to play several shows. And this time around, she came to Roosters Taproom. And Roosters is a fantastic independent craft beer brewery in Hornby Park in Harrogate. And their tap room probably holds about 150 people tops, if that. And she came back on Thursday night, and I bought tickets rather than like trying to get press review tickets for the Harrogate Times. I thought, I just want to go. I'm going to buy tickets. And she was so good in such a small venue, especially since her former headmaster was in the front row.
Oh, really? In the front row?
And her best friend's mum was in the second row. And so she was
going on the headmaster's there writing notes, judging, to send a report.
Well, yeah, she said she was actually dead scared about being on stage in front of him again. But she was only joking. And by then she was saying the great thing about being a comedian is that you can stand on stage and actually tell your headmaster to shut up, which is quite funny. And she was just superb.
So, I mean, was it? Did she do? Was it topical? Did it?
Well,
Was it fresh material? What was the circumstance?
well, she does a show called Appraisal where she analyzes her own performance as a comedian
Yeah,
and whether she's come up to scratch and whether she needs to make improvements. But this was a much more informal, casual show than her
yes.
Appraisal
I
tour.
thought it might be. Yeah.
And
Mm.
I got a distinct impression that she's so good now. It's like when we used to go to the Fringe to see comedians in Edinburgh in the
Mm.
1990s on a much more regular basis than we do now.
Yeah.
It was like watching a top comic then. She's
Mm.
reached that high
Mm.
standard. And I got the distinct impression that she can busk it and be funny. She can turn any situation in front of her into comedy. That's how good she's become. It was just superbly free flowing, tackling any subject that came to mind. But it was mainly her interaction with the audience. Half the show was comedy about her talking to the audience and knowing the audience and her own past in the town. It was a very personal show.
Mm. That reminded me of Rob Orton when he played his gig in York this year. Again, he was playing to people that because he was brought up in Pocklington, I think, from memory. So he was playing to a home crowd of
Mm.
people that he knew really well, and he kept on referring to that. He does that whenever he plays here, and it's interesting how he uses that as part of the show. On a very trivial note, Graham, Maisie's hair's been fascinating recently with what she's been doing with it.
Mm, mm.
What was the latest hairstyle?
Well, it's sort of like slightly slightly limp peacock white hair. Now, at first I thought it's a bit like if today's Paul Weller had forgotten to freshen up his hair, but she said that she'd actually been called recently Rod Stewart,
Oh
and
yeah,
that her own
yeah.
family was now calling her Rod Stewart.
Rod Stewart, yeah,
Because if you remember, in the
in
70s,
his Faces
people forgot.
days.
He's
Yeah,
still got the main thing about Rod Stewart isn't his music; it's the fact he's still got the same great sort of like feather haircut that
other
he had
hair.
in
Yeah,
1972, and
yeah.
he's still pulling it off. And her hair's a little bit like that, so she made a big joke about how everybody calls her Rod Stewart now.
Excellent. Well, Graham, I had no idea if we've got any time left. We're coming up to the 40th minute, so it probably is towards the end. Can I wish you
I
personally,
think we
Graham,
have. I think we
a
have.
very Merry Christmas and look forward to seeing you over Christmas time. And thank you for another year's broadcasting. So enjoyed it every Sunday night. It's a privilege to do this with you as
And
I'm hardly worthy these days as you're now a Six Music star. So, but thank you from me, Graham, because I've really enjoyed doing this.
when your mind is
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic Sub production.